Drawn Together is a series blessed with as many fans as detractors. The weird thing to me is that I actually agree with a lot of the criticism this show has gotten, but I don't think those issues are detrimental to the show, as I think Drawn Together is a lot funnier and smarter than a lot of people give it credit for. The show is about 8 cartoon characters, all of which are parodies of cartoon archetypes, that now has to live together in a house similar to a reality show. I think the main reason this show works is how well it parodies all of these cartoons. Great parody comes from a good understanding of what you're satirizing, and of course putting a comedic twist on it. That's why movies like Young Frankenstein and shows like The Venture Brothers are so successful. The characters are not just funnier versions of the originals. There is logic to the way they are. For example, Clara is supposed to represent the Disney princess archetype. She is stupid, selfish, racist, and a religious fundamentalist. What does any of that have to do with the Disney princesses, you might ask? Well, let me tell you. Most Disney fairy tales, with some obvious exceptions, takes place during the Middle Ages, a time when prejudice was the norm. Unless you were a white Christian, you was considered a second-class citizen, and education was not in everybody's best interest. So, if we look at the Disney princesses not as role models but as products of their environment, isn't Clara a more realistic character than, say, Belle or Cinderella? Waldorf Sockbat is of course a parody on SpongeBob, but he also has a lot in common with Bugs Bunny and Roger Rabbit in that he can do anything and act as he wants as long as it results in a joke. Normally, Waldorf has a childlike mentality as well as a childlike intelligence, but other times he is an intelligent and cruel doctor, and he puts himself in predicaments that we know that he can get out of, but, to quote Roger Rabbit, I can't do it unless there is a joke. Captain Hero is of course a parody on superheroes. He has all the powers of Superman, but even less intelligence than Bizarro. He is also a coward that flips out at the first sight of trouble, and he does some pretty fucked up shit throughout the series, but there's never anything malicious about it. He just doesn't know any better. Xander is a video game character that is homosexual, and really, who hasn't done a gay joke towards video game characters? I mean, since most gamers are guys, why does so many video game heroes look like they just came out of an erotic role play? Despite having his moments of selfishness, Xander really is the nicest guy in the gang, and he often works as sort of the peacemaker of the group. Then there's Ling Ling, the battle monster. He is obviously a Pokemon parody, but he does have a lot of things in common with many other anime characters. He is all about honor and fighting. He is very aggressive and has even killed some people. Ling Ling only speaks Japanese, but it has been shown in several episodes that he actually can speak English. He just chooses not to, because, well, who the fuck would want to have a conversation with any of these assholes? He has shown to have interests outside of fighting, which makes him a lot more likable. But my favorite character in the show has to be Spanky Ham. Spanky is a download icon like the Paperclip Guy or the GIF. These are characters we all hate. Get away, you little shit, and let me do my stuff. But Spanky is able to take all our cynical hatred and actually relish in it. The more vile and obnoxious he is, the better he feels. And he can be such an asshole. Think of him as a pig version of Bender. In a strange way, Spanky is somewhat of a role model. Now, don't get me wrong, he's a horrible role model for common decency. But there's something to admire about his attitude of, I don't care what you think of me as long as I do what I like. And in a time when popularity and acceptance seems to be more and more important, Spanky's philosophy is a piece of fresh air. Plus, he's not always an asshole. He is shown to, have feelings and care about some of the people in the group. There are, however, two characters that I just don't get. One of them is Toot. She is supposed to be a parody of Betty Boop. She is a mean-spirited bitch with an eating problem. Now, can anybody please tell me what the fuck any of this has to do with Betty Boop? I'm not the biggest fan of Betty Boop, but I know that she is a dancer that goes on bizarre adventures. Where does an eating disorder factor in there? Plus, she's really not fat. I have seen fat women, and Toot is at best a bit chubby. I'm not saying this because I have anything against fat jokes. Actually, many of the fat jokes in this show is very funny. But if you're going to have a character that revolves around fat jokes, at least make her really freaking fat. And last is Foxy Love. She is supposed to represent the teen detective archetype that was pretty relevant during the 60s and 70s. She is a complete slut that sleeps with everyone, and I mean everyone, and she uses a lot of ghetto slang. Once again, there is no rhyme or reason with this character. I don't remember any of those old cartoon characters was particularly sexualized at all. Fox and Toot is not bad characters precisely, but they get a laugh every so often, but I just think they could have been written a little bit better. More than the characters, there are surprisingly a lot to like about this show. Like, for instance, the voice acting. We got James Arnold Taylor, the voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi in Clone Wars, playing both Waldor and you producer, the show's host. Jess Harnell, best known as Wacko from Animaniacs, plays Captain Hero, and Tara Strong plays both Princess Clara and Toot. And if you don't know who Tara Strong is, you should feel ashamed of yourself. I also really like the relationships that the characters made during the series. Sure, they usually didn't last more than a season, but I thought they were kind of clever. Sander and Captain Hero had an off-again, on-again romance that actually worked. I mean, they are both crime fighters, even if they're bad at it. Plus, you really get the sense that they care about each other. Hero is often the one that gives Sander his time of the day, and Sander is the one that has the most patience with the Hero's stupid mistakes. Hero also had a relationship with Foxy, but that only seemed to be about the sex, so I prefer the Hero-Sander relationship a lot more. I also liked the romance Clara and Spanky had during the first season. They fell in love because their common sense of vile acts and humor. So you can sort of see it as an anti-Beauty and the Beast story. Being sort of the child of the group, Waldor grew to idolize Captain Hero and became Clara's best friend. Another thing I like is that every character in the show has its own theme tune. This was something you saw in a lot of older cartoons like Animaniacs and Batman, but you don't see that very much in modern cartoons. But here you can definitely hear it, every time Toot has a moment, you can hear a special tune in the background. And when it's Hero that has a moment, you definitely hear another theme tune playing in the background. Drawn Together is often brought up as an example of one of those adult cartoons that are nothing but toilet humor without the social commentary that Finite so many others. But there are actually a few episodes in the series that do provide social commentary, and they do it in a very smart way. When South Park or Family Guy tries to send a message, they usually portray whoever or whatever they criticize as, well, brain dead, but Drawn Together instead seem to pretend to like the argument just to show how improbable it all really is. And I will give you an example. There's one particularly great episode in where Waldor Sockbat makes his own TV show that turns all the children in the world gay. So a super heterosexual robot are sent from the future to kill Waldor. More than being a very funny Terminator parody, this is a nice stab against parent groups that think children's shows will change their kids' sexuality. These kinds of episodes, however, are few and far in between. Most of the episodes just focus on these characters doing, really funny things or going on bizarre adventures. And do you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. I think it's really freaking funny, and they are very creative. And now I'm going to talk about the one major thing I didn't like about this show: the hyper-realistic gross-out humor. You see, the creators of this show got the freedom to do anything they wanted, so they did just that. But just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. I do understand that all humor needs to have some shock value to them, but if you make the punchline too gross, it gets distracting and you forget what the punchline was. I think what the show needed was somebody that could tell the writers, maybe we should tone it down a little bit. Drawn Together did get its own movie titled The Drawn Together Movie, the movie. In the film, the gang discovers that their show has been cancelled, so they go on a quest to get their show back on the air, while also avoiding the network that wants them dead. I personally think that this was the perfect way to cap off the series, as every character got their moment to shine. Your producer had his redemption. Ling Ling, Sander, and Hero cements their friendship. Foxy Love solves all the mysteries. We get a disturbing insight into Waldor's psyche, and it even allows Spanky and Toot to save the day in the end. And yes, this movie does sum up pretty much my entire opinion of South Park. While I do not think there's a right or wrong reason to like something, my opinion when it comes to TV shows and movies is that it should entertain me before it should try to teach me something. Drawn Together mostly do tender to the lowest common denominator, but it do manage to keep its stories and jokes funny and clever, which always was the series' main objective. See you next time!